words and descriptions. Words matter. Descriptions matter. It affects society as a whole, really, and people, individuals on that come together to make society. But just simple things as far as I need versus I want or I like. Simple example, just ordering food. I would like, to order this or that instead of I need this or that. Well, you really don't need it. You would like it. Do you want it? You want it. You don't need it. For a lot of things. I need this versus I'd like this or I want this. Yeah, it's minor, but it's huge. I really feel it's huge. It's huge in the way people come off, and it's huge in the way people relate to one another. That'll go into Social Security. Security being called a benefit, it's anything but a benefit. It was sold this false narrative, this thing, sold a narrative that's false. This whole thing itself, Social Security, is just a mess. But anyways, they said, the powers that should not be, has said that we're going to keep a little bit away, out of your check, and then your employer will pay that much also equivalent for you, and we're going to put it away in an account or in some sort of whatever they want to call it, and then it will grow, and then when you need it, not when you would like it, but when you need it, when they feel you need it. So when you're their retirement age, or if you qualify for disability that they approve, or you're widowed and you're approved to have whatever, of the Social Security from someone else, whatever, those kinds of scenarios that you need, that they say you need, not want, then you may have a little bit of a percentage of all the funds that were stolen from you and your employer over the years, a little bit back. Maybe you got a year left to live because you're really, having issues with health, that kind of stuff. But here's your Social Security for that. It won't pay for much, but you know what? We told you could have it back when you need it. Well, you need it according to them. So anyways, they've been calling that a benefit for a long time. It's anything but a benefit. It shouldn't have been taken in the first place, but they're giving you just a small percentage back years and years and years and years down the road. Well after you need it, really, or you would like it, really. How about inflation versus counterfeiting or theft? Well, it's inflation. Well, no, really, it's counterfeiting and theft is what it is. How about taxes versus theft? Well, these are taxes. We're going to raise your taxes. Well, no, it's theft. That's what it is. Plain and simple, it's theft. Period. The country got by great before there was income tax. Everything was going good. And then states, once they came about, got along and did great before they had their individual income taxes. Granted, a few still don't, which is great. And then all the other taxes that are on top of taxes that are on top of taxes that are on top of taxes. So value-added tax that they add to things now. You're paying your Social Security tax now, and in some states you're paying on top of federal tax, and then you have your income tax, and then you have your property tax, then you have your sales tax, then you have tax on everything. Basically, some places you're taxed on what it is you own. I believe DC's like that. District of Criminals. That's what that stands for. Washington District of Criminals. But anyways, how about fossil fuels? They're not fossil fuels. They're really not. That was a narrative that was sold because they wanted to sell it as a rarity because it's got a limit on it, so they could start charging what they wanted to, and then the government benefits and whole other realm of things to dive into for there. But Anyways, it's not. And please watch this video.
Well, you mentioned in one of your last talks that petroleum wasn't what we thought it was, that it wasn't a fossil fuel, that it didn't come from fossil animals.
Yeah.
Is it just a mineral? Is it a mineral like any other mineral? Is that how it, what would you say, what's the origin of
You see,
petroleum?
when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed on axles or wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing, and remember, trains started in the beginning of the 19th century, then oil went from just a lubricant to a fuel, and it made it valuable. And Rockefeller happened to be the smartest man in the business at the time, but he made most of his money, or much of it, off the transport of the petroleum as well as selling it. But one thing they realized was, because oil is putting a price on oil is like putting a price on a pail of water. You know, no initial cost. It's in the ground, and in those days they were, some of it almost what you'd call surface mining the oil. They didn't go down deep. So in order to get the price up, they hit on the idea that they would have to make it appear to be scarce. That after we take the next few barrels out, we're probably going to have to close as well. You know, that kind of thing. Well, a very fortuitous event. In 1892, there was a convention in Geneva of scientists to determine what organic substances are. Well, the definition of organic is a substance with hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And so it's usually a living substance, a tree. You analyze a dead tree, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and grass, and so on, living things. Animals, we are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. So at this Geneva Convention, Rockefeller took advantage of sending some scientists over who said, oil, petroleum, is hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Therefore, it must be derived from the spoiling, the rotting of formerly living matter. And playing the game properly, when this scientific convention was over, they defined oil as the residue from formerly living matter. Well, that makes it a fossil fuel. I don't know why they decided to use the word fossil, but it says formerly living matter, it's fossil. Well, of course, today, and another thing we should know is that there has never been a fossil, a real fossil, found below 16,000 feet. And you can't argue at 16,000 as a level line, because someplace the ground sinks and so on. But 16 is what the scientists say, 16,000. We mine oil, or we drill for oil, at 30,000, 33,000, 28,000 every day of the week. So right there we rule it out that it isn't fossil fuel. It's called fossil fuel for the minds of the public to feel that it is an asset that is running out, being depleted. We talk about depletion allowance, which is a lot of, and actually if you know the world's oil supply, you know that it is not going to run out for an awfully long time. It is the second most prevalent liquid on Earth. And we haven't begun to... Well, with all that background, you see, the people in charge of the petroleum business, for perfectly reasonable business things, like any other man in the business, wants to keep his price as high as he can get away with. And the way to do is just say, well, there's no more. The last barrel is going to cost $1,000, and then it's all done. And they preach that stuff. What bothers me is that in geology books, it's in there. The geologists say it's a fossil fuel. Somehow they've been bought. I went to a 4-year federal staff energy seminar run by the government of the United States during the so-called energy crisis. I was the participant that represented the railroad industry. The airline industry was there. Every AA, administrative assistant of senators and congressmen, was there. The CIA was there, the Defense Department was there, the State Department was there. Sometimes sitting right in front of me in the row would be Henry Kissinger with his friend, the head of Department of Defense, That's too bad. I can't put the names with them. But anyway, people like that, top men in the government, sitting there listening to the Federal Staff Energy Seminar. Well, what this was doing is for 4 years, they were teaching a propaganda line to the leading people in this country, and therefore to the leading people in the world, when you include the Schlesingers, Kissinger and Schlesinger, among others. And the object of it was, as Kissinger used in his own terms when it was time for him to speak, to create a world price for oil. In other words, not 30 cents a gallon here and 90 cents a gallon there, but let's get a world price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum. And I don't know if the name Arthur Kantrowitz rings any bell. Arthur Kantrowitz is the head of the Kantrowitz Labs, set up by the AVCO company near Boston, Scientific Laboratories, and a great man in the scientific world. And Kantrowitz and I were sitting at a table at this seminar once, and the table happened to be all young college grad, PhD geologists. And so just to get a conversation started, I turned to Kantrowitz and I said, Arthur, what do you think about this foolishness of these speakers talking about fossil fuel? And it was kind of put up. He started laughing. He said, you know, that gets me. He says, I don't have a geology degree, but he had 1,000 other degrees. And he said, I don't understand. He said, you'd think that these heads, these other fellows at the table, we did it on purpose, start listening, you know. And he asked, he said, are you gentlemen, he says, you're here at the meeting, are you gentlemen by any chance geologists? And one fellow, yes, I am. And the other, yeah. He said, well, why don't you tell me? He said, why is oil, you know, and he went on like that. We brought the house down because nobody could argue with Kantrowitz. He like Einstein. People aren't going to, and he told him right there, he said, just drop it. But it's in all the books and in all the papers. But it started from that strange meeting in 1892, a scientific convention. I have a big, thick scientific encyclopedia put out by the Divan Ostrand Company that's about 15 years old now, but it has the whole story of the conference. It doesn't have the Rockefeller part, but it has the whole story of how they straightened out organic chemicals and how it was all figured, and they've got petroleum right in there.
Amazing. Amazing. So
these aren't accidental things, you see. There's a dollar sign behind almost everything.
okay.
Fossil fuels, which now you can see and look into that, are not considered fossil fuels, and I cringe every time anyone who has any celebrity to them, whether that's a politician or an anchor on TV or someone else, wealthy guy that people listen to, calls it fossil fuels, I cringe because that's not what it is. It's not fossil fuels. Look into it. It's sourced from this earth that has nothing to do with fossils, period. End of story. How about climate change versus what it actually is? What it actually is, it's something that was drummed up so they can get control and power. Because before climate change, remember, it used to be called the coming ice age. Was this the 60s or 70s? And then acid rain was huge. And then the destruction of the ozone layer. And then global warming, that was huge. Ask Al Gore about that whole propaganda piece. He did. And so now I think they decided, instead of always being wrong and having people question them, because anytime you question, you don't hold any sort of power, you don't hold any sort of people behind you. When you have questions, you have shaky followers. Now they just changed it to climate change, because you know what? The climate's always changed for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So if we can just grab that and name it climate change, and we'll use that, then no one will question us. And we can point at everything that happens. It's heating up so bad this summer because of climate change. Or there's these tornadoes or these hurricanes because of climate change. Or it was so cold this spring because of climate change. Or it snowed, 3 feet this month because of climate change. Or it didn't snow barely at all this month when it usually does because of climate change. See how that works? That's how it's been going, and that's what's going to continue to happen. So the coming ice age is climate change. Global warming means climate change. I don't think they could. They could say the ozone layer is climate change. Acid rain definitely could say climate change. They could say something about sickness and health, quote unquote. It's because of climate change. A bad flu season, if they want to run it with that. Climate change. Whatever else they want to call it. Inflation's up because of climate change. You could definitely see that. Gas prices are up because of climate change. Whatever. I mean, everything they can point to for that. That's just throwing crap at the wall, and whatever sticks, they're gonna circle and say, "Oh, see, told you." That's what it is. Climate change. So, think about this stuff. I mean, vaccines versus the shot and jab from a private company, which, the story, wanted to force people to get and take and that kind of stuff. This product from a private company, they wanted to force people to take, and they called it this name that is not. Just think about that. So that makes me think of, ever since I was little, I always heard rumblings of war. I mean, the biggest one in my life was the Cold War, the whole Cold War scare for how long. And then that got done with, and then it sort of seemed like it was good and free and clear for quite some time. And then pretty soon there's this whole thing with, the Middle East again. There was that earlier before the whole, Cold War. There was the Middle East, and there was the Cold War, and then there's this Middle East thing again. And now, it's just psyop after psyop. Excuse me. But anyways, just put it all together, put it all in a group, and what do you get? You get war on drugs, war on poverty, war on terrorism, war. Well, because if you're in a war, if you have a war going on, you can not have to abide by the Constitution, or at least all of it. You can have emergency powers for whatever you want because of war. And that sort of sounds eerily similar to climate change. You can have, whatever powers you want because of climate change. Well, maybe we're in this war because of climate change, or climate change is because of this war. It doesn't matter. All that matters is all the power that is drawn to the powers that shouldn't be because of war or because of climate change. I'm just saying this to keep people thinking it's all about words and descriptions. Just like nowadays we got a Supreme Court justice who cannot tell you what a female is, even though that was the sole reason she got hired for that position, because of the color of her skin and because she was a female. And when she was asked, can you identify or can you give the definition of a female, she said she can't because she's not a biologist. You tell me words don't matter. Absolutely words matter. Descriptions matter. I mean, there's a reason why all these males are winning these women's only sports, swimming, that kind of stuff, because they're not women. Plain and simple. They're males in a women's sport. There's no argument to that whatsoever. And they'd say, well, because they're on hormones and hormone replacement therapy and this and that, and messes with their system, and it doesn't matter. Do a little research. Doesn't matter. Look into it. But anyways, I didn't mean to get on this whole narrative there, and I'm sure this is going to get deleted from me. I'll get a strike. Maybe, I'll get my last boot from YouTube, but whatever. I got those other channels. Please watch them. Those ones I care about more so anyways. A lot more people there watching those other channels. Not channels. Those other venues. Your BitChute, your Float, your Odyssey that I'm on there. I know there's a lot of times that I'll forget even to upload to YouTube until a few days later than I do. Anyways, I'm not trying to rip on it. I'm just saying, you know, it's going to happen sometime, but I refuse to try to beat around the bush and try to, you know, go with them and give them any more power than they've already stolen and are stealing. But anyways, if you like this, hit the like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and stay vigilant, protect yourself, protect your family, protect your health, and protect your life.